telling you, people go searching for time as if it's a coin lost between the cushions. But here's what Mr. Shoaff taught me all those years ago. Time isn't found, time is claimed. That's the first shift. I don't have time slips out so easily, but it says a lot. Every no-time moment carries a quiet truth. The hours have already been given away, traded for what was allowed to matter most, whether that choice was conscious or not. It's tempting to imagine the day as something outside of personal control, tick-tocking away, immune to willpower. But there are two types of time. Clock time, which moves along no matter what's happening, and control time, which is shaped by deliberate choice. Clock time asks for nothing. It simply passes. Control time demands intention. It means saying, these minutes, these hours belong to what I decide, not just to what comes knocking. This is where priorities show themselves, often uninvited. A person doesn't need to declare what matters. Their calendar, their daily habits, the shape of their week will do all the talking. If every day feels hurried, if there's never room for what truly counts, the calendar isn't lying. It's a record of what has been allowed, tolerated, and chosen again and again. Some imagine that treating time as a scarce resource is the answer. They search for better planners, faster routines, clever tricks to squeeze out another 10 minutes. But time isn't a resource, it's a consequence. It appears or disappears in direct proportion to standards held and enforced. Low standards invite chaos. High standards create margin. It's revealing to look at how people protect their money, their property, their reputation, and yet let the most valuable possession, time, be stolen in broad daylight, a few minutes at a time. Here's a question worth asking. What's the real cost of living with borrowed priorities, of spending time according to someone else's agenda? The answer is subtle at first, but grows loud over the years. There's a reason why the busiest person isn't always the most productive, and the person with the most free time often feels the least in control. Priorities are always at work, reshaping the day, with or without permission. Hours disappear, not because they've been taken, but because they've been surrendered. The real transformation happens when time stops being treated as a resource and starts being recognized as a reflection, a consequence of standards set. Want to know what matters to someone? Watch where the hours flow. Want to change the future? Change what the hours serve. So consider this a turning point. From now on, every time I don't have time rises up, challenge it. Ask, what did I choose instead? What standard shaped this day? Only then does control begin and opportunity show up for the person who's ready to claim it. If time slips away so quietly, the next question is where it actually goes. Most believe their time leaks in dramatic ways. A missed appointment here, an unexpected crisis there. But time loss is rarely accidental. It's structural, built into the habits and systems a person lives by, often without ever noticing. There's a hidden world of drains that most overlook. Transition time, for one. Moving from one task to another, the mind drifts, settles, then finally gets started. 5 minutes lost here, 10 there. Recovery time is another. After a difficult conversation, a challenging meeting, a piece of bad news, how long does it take before attention returns? Many waste more hours recovering than they ever do in direct work. And then there's indecision. Nothing will rob a day faster than sitting at the crossroads, hesitating, second-guessing, rehashing options until enthusiasm wears thin and energy is gone. Not every drain is obvious. Emotional avoidance has a cost. A mind running from a difficult decision, a person dodging the discomfort of the next right step. Low-value tasks pile up because they're easy, familiar, unthreatening. But these activities consume prime real estate on the calendar, while the work that moves life forward keeps getting postponed. It's not the big, dramatic interruptions that drain the week. It's the small, persistent ones that hide in plain sight. Busyness disguises waste better than anything else. A jam-packed calendar can look impressive, but activity isn't the same as achievement. Many spend days rushing from one obligation to the next, believing that movement equals progress. But when evening comes, they wonder why so little seems to have changed. There's power in seeing the reality, not just the intention. Here's a challenge. Set aside the theories and hopes for a week. Conduct a 7-day reality audit. Not just what was planned, but what actually happened. Record the start and end of each block of time, no matter how minor. Write down when work truly began, when the mind wandered, when the television took over, when focus was lost. Compare it to the plan that started the week. This isn't about guilt, it's about clarity. Most will be surprised. The hours lost to transitions, the energy drained by indecision, the cycles of recovery after small setbacks, all of it adds up to days, even weeks, over the course of a year. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets ignored gets repeated. The lesson is simple. Time leaks aren't the result of being unlucky or having a bad week. They are the consequence of patterns built into the structure of each day. When a person becomes aware, truly aware of where the hours go, they're no longer at the mercy of the clock. The opportunity begins not with better plans, but with an honest look at reality. It's a curious thing. So much time seems to evaporate before the real work ever begins. Most assume the minutes are lost during the doing, but look closer. The greatest loss comes before the first step, inside the bottleneck of decision. Action delays not because the path is too hard, but because the mind lingers, circling the question, should I or shouldn't I? Now or later? Every time the same choice returns, precious energy goes with it. There's a world of difference between repeated decisions and pre-decisions. Repeated decisions drain willpower, eating away at momentum. Pre-decisions, on the other hand, transform action into a matter of routine. It's the power of deciding once and letting that choice echo into every similar situation. Consider the difference between someone who asks themselves every single day whether to exercise and someone who's already set the standard. Exercise is part of who I am, not up for daily debate. One spends energy in negotiation, the other spends it in motion. Clarity saves more time than speed ever could. Many chase efficiency, looking for ways to do things faster, to squeeze the most out of every minute. But when clarity is missing, the wheels spin with no direction. Decisions multiply, each one small but draining. But with clarity, knowing what matters, what gets the first and best hours, action flows with less resistance. Installing non-negotiables is a strategy that quietly transforms a week. These are the decisions made once, written into the fabric of the day, immune to mood or weather or other people's urgencies. A non-negotiable isn't a wish, it's a boundary. It could be as simple as no meetings before 10 in the morning, or the first 90 minutes go to deep work, undisturbed, no phone calls at the dinner table. These rules don't just protect time, they multiply it by removing the need for constant deliberation. Every day, a person is confronted by dozens of choices, large and small. The mind loves to postpone, to say, I'll decide later. But each delay is another crack where time seeps out. Here's where decision rules come in. Create them once and let them handle the negotiation. For example, if a meeting doesn't have a clear agenda, it doesn't get attended. If an opportunity doesn't fit the year's top priorities, it gets a polite no, no matter how tempting. If a task can't be finished in under 10 minutes, schedule it for a focused block. Don't try to squeeze it in. When these rules are in place, the bottleneck opens up. Time, once lost to hesitation and back and forth, now flows freely toward what matters most. It's not about becoming a robot, locked into rigidity. It's about making fewer, better decisions, then letting those decisions buy back the hours that would otherwise slip away. The opportunity belongs to the one who makes the tough choices up front. Most time is lost before action begins, not because the work is difficult, but because the decision was never made. Some believe the solution to time trouble is squeezing more into the calendar, extending the hours, burning the midnight oil. But the truth is, time doesn't expand just because more is demanded. It flexes or collapses based on the quality of energy brought to it. A person can have an entire afternoon free and accomplish nothing, or take a single hour at peak capacity and move mountains. There's a fundamental difference between high leverage hours and low leverage hours. High leverage hours are those moments in the day when energy is sharp, creativity is alive, and the mind is focused. For some, it's early morning before the world stirs. For others, it's late at night when distractions fade. In those pockets of clarity, what takes 3 hours in the afternoon might take only 40 minutes. And yet so many schedule their most important work when their mind is at its lowest point, saving the best energy for the least demanding tasks. Designing a day around peak capacity rather than squeezing important work into leftover scraps is a game changer. It means knowing, not guessing, when attention is highest and building a schedule that honors it. If energy is at its best between 8 and 10 in the morning, that time gets reserved for the work that matters most. Not email, not small errands, but the deep work that shapes the future. And this approach reveals a truth. So-called free time is usually unusable. Unstructured blocks squeezed between obligations tend to evaporate. The mind is scattered, the energy fragmented. Productivity drops, frustration rises. Most people wait for big, open spaces to finally start something meaningful, but those spaces rarely arrive. The real opportunity is in protecting small, powerful windows, then pouring energy into them, fully and without distraction. It's easy to look at the day and see only the constraints, but the solution isn't to find more time. It's to restructure what's already there. Take a look at the calendar and ask, where is my best energy? Where do I keep giving away high leverage hours to low value activity? The goal isn't to fill every minute. It's to focus the best energy on what will matter years from now. This isn't theory, it's practical. Make a simple shift. For 1 week, identify the high leverage hours and guard them fiercely. Move the important work into those slots. Let the rest of the day absorb the smaller routine tasks. Most will be surprised at how much can be accomplished. Not by adding hours, but by protecting energy. The opportunity is not in working longer, but in working smarter. Time stretches for the person who brings energy, intention, and focus. When the day is built around peak capacity, even the busiest schedule opens up, and the sense of being overwhelmed starts to fade. You see, there's a strong temptation in this age to believe that the answer to a crowded, chaotic schedule is more skill, more technology, or a better system. But the real breakthrough comes not from managing more, but from carrying less. Most people don't need better time management. They need fewer commitments. Look closely, and you'll see how obligations accumulate like clutter in a storeroom. Every yes given too quickly, every favor promised without a pause, every invitation accepted without a moment of reflection, over time, these pile up. And the weight isn't obvious at first. It's a few extra meetings here, a minor responsibility there. But add them together and suddenly there's no room left for anything new or meaningful. It's easy to underestimate the cost of saying yes too cheaply. Every time a person commits to something out of habit, politeness, or guilt, they write a check from the only account that can never be refilled, their time. These small withdrawals don't always feel urgent, but they add up to something significant: the loss of opportunity for what could move life forward. Here's the practice. Before adding, start by subtracting. Conduct a simple exercise, a commitments purge. Lay out in black and white every standing obligation. What stops immediately without real loss? What gets reduced to free up the best hours? It's not always comfortable, but comfort isn't the goal. Clarity is. The strongest structures are those with clean lines, not cluttered corners. Some will discover that a third of what fills their week could be trimmed with no real consequence. Low return obligations, the meetings with no outcome, the projects that go nowhere, the favors that drain more than they give. These are the first to go. Each commitment removed is not just time reclaimed. It's space made for something higher, something chosen rather than inherited. This is the true power of subtraction. Most people fear that letting go means missing out. But the opposite is true. Saying no to what doesn't matter is how space is made for what does. The person who protects their time with the same seriousness as their money or reputation is the one who finds margin, focus, and eventually progress. Try it. For the next week, make a list. What commitments end now? Which ones shrink to match their true value? With each item removed, notice what returns. Not just hours, but energy, clarity, and the ability to steer the day with intention. The calendar doesn't lie. When the clutter falls away, opportunity finds the person who is ready. What follows may look like a secret, especially when observing those who seem to have time to spare, even as the world spins in chaos. But the explanation isn't better tactics or fancier planners. It's the standards they hold. Standards create the margins where time appears. Set the bar low, and the day fills with clutter and compromise. Raise the standard, and time suddenly shows up where it never seemed to exist. It's important to understand the difference between minimum standards and aspirational goals. Minimum standards are the non-negotiables, the absolute baseline of what's allowed and what isn't. They are not dreams or wishes. They are enforced lines that define how each day unfolds. For some, it might be never missing a family dinner. For another, it could be refusing to check email before a certain hour. These standards aren't about perfection, but about consistency. Aspirational goals, on the other hand, are what stretch and inspire, but they don't hold the day together. Goals without standards create a life of hope and disappointment. Standards without goals can lead to stagnation. But when strong minimum standards are in place, each day starts to align with purpose, not just good intentions. Raising standards does something remarkable. It reduces decision fatigue. When life is built on clear rules, this is what happens, this is what never happens, the mind is freed from constant negotiation. Each decision takes energy, and every option that must be weighed drains the capacity for meaningful action. The disciplined person seems to have more time, not because the day is longer, but because fewer hours are lost to indecision and regret. A simple framework emerges. Standards lead to habits, and habits lead to time control. When high standards are set and enforced, the right habits begin to form naturally. Show up, do the work, say no to distractions, repeat. Over time, these habits create a structure where time is protected, priorities are honored, and progress becomes inevitable. Notice how disciplined people walk with a quiet confidence. They aren't rushing, always behind, apologizing for being late. Their standards create a buffer, a margin that makes room for the unexpected. When others scramble to catch up, they simply adjust because time is no longer the enemy. It has become an ally shaped and directed by the standards they refuse to compromise. Here's the invitation. Review your minimum standards. Not what you hope for on a good week, but what you demand every week. Make those standards visible. Write them down. Commit to enforcing them. Life won't change overnight, but with each passing week, the feeling of control begins to return. And as control returns, so does opportunity. Time isn't a mystery, it's a mirror. Raise the standard and watch what appears. That shift in standards naturally raises a second question. It's one thing to have good intentions, even strong standards, but another thing entirely to build a system that protects time from mood, chaos, or the unpredictable turns of life. Willpower alone can't hold back the tide of distractions. Systems do what memory and motivation cannot. They stand guard when enthusiasm fades. The strongest system isn't complicated. It's not about color-coded charts or minute-by-minute tracking. Simplicity is the goal. A weekly structure, visible, clear, and easy to defend. When the week has a backbone, a person can bend without breaking. The system is there, rain or shine, good days or bad. Here's what you do. Begin with the week, not the day. Look at the entire stretch. Where do the important priorities fit? What gets the first and best blocks of time? Protect these anchor points, then let everything else flow around them. The most effective people don't micromanage every hour. They make a few key appointments with themselves and keep them as if they were meetings with the most important person in the world, because they are. You see, buffer zones are the secret weapon of any good system. Most schedules fail not because they're too loose, but because they're too tight, leaving no margin for the unexpected. A meeting runs over, an urgent call interrupts, energy dips lower than expected. When buffer zones exist, recovery is built in. The day absorbs the shock rather than falling apart. Making time visible changes the game. When the week is mapped out on a page, on a wall, wherever it's seen daily, commitments can't hide. Blind spots are exposed. The creeping spread of small tasks and hidden obligations becomes obvious. Time can be defended only when it's seen. This is where the personal time architecture comes in. It's not a rigid cage, but a flexible framework, a weekly template. Place the non-negotiables first. Mark the high leverage hours. Carve out buffer zones. Leave some white space. The system is personal, tailored to strengths, energy, and real-life demands. With a simple structure in place, time starts to feel less like a current dragging a person along, and more like a resource flowing in the right direction. No more scrambling to catch up. No more regret at week's end. Instead, there's a sense of calm. Time is visible. Commitments are defendable. And opportunity finds its place in the open spaces. A good system doesn't require perfect days. It only needs to withstand the strain of real life. When someone takes time seriously enough to build this kind of structure, the result isn't immediate perfection, but gradual alignment. Week after week, more of life begins to fall into place. That progression leads to a simple but powerful truth. Your calendar is a mirror. Every week, every appointment, every blank space, and every overfull day reflects not just what was done, but who you were becoming in the process. The stories told about being busy, or the reasons given for not having enough time, may sound convincing to others. But the calendar tells the real story. Time doesn't lie, it records. Now look, this is not about judgment. It's about clarity. The hours given to what matters, the space protected for growth, the commitments trimmed away, all of it adds up. Look at the calendar and see not just a list of events, but a record of priorities, values, and standards. When there's alignment, life flows with less resistance. When there's a gap, frustration rises. And so does the sense that opportunity is always just out of reach. There's a satisfaction that comes from finding time. Not because it was stumbled upon, but because it was created. Opportunity always favors the prepared. When standards are raised, when distractions are cut, when decision rules are installed, the hours needed for growth and progress begin to appear. Not by magic, but by method. Consider what happens when time aligns with intention. Relationships deepen, work becomes more meaningful, energy rises, stress falls away, replaced by a quiet confidence that there is room for what matters. The feeling of always running behind fades, replaced by the certainty that whatever comes, the essentials have been given their due. The search for more time ends where standards begin. Look in the mirror of the calendar and ask, what does this reflect? If the answer brings pride, keep building. If it brings discomfort, remember, change is always possible, one decision at a time. The path is not to squeeze more from every minute, but to direct every minute toward a life chosen, not inherited. Time is the great equalizer. It belongs to no one and to everyone, but it yields its treasures only to those who prepare, who build, who hold the line on what matters most. The hours are there waiting to be claimed. Let the days ahead be a reflection of new standards, new clarity, and a new commitment to the life that is possible. When time aligns, life follows. That is the invitation, and that is the reward.